Manchester band James' fifth album, Laid, is a moody, understated alt-rock classic, blending acoustic and ambient soundscapes with emotionally charged choruses. Its title track became one of the 90s great accidental anthems alongside Creep and Song 2, a cheeky celebration of love and lust that unexpectedly cracked US radio, marking a deliberate break from prior stadium rock excess, leading to its parent album going gold in America. What led these monk-like Mancunians, so opposed to the rock star image, to reinvent their sound, lean into tour hijinks, and to reconsider focusing on this scrappy throwaway, even releasing it as a single? Well, buckle up, because today we're going to discuss Beverly Hills fireworks mishaps, tour bus ambient porn, and perplexing French paramilitary with cross-dressing antics. This is the story of how James got laid. In 1992, James were largely unheard of stateside. Few knew of their factory beginnings, Sire and Fontana releases, or tours with the Smiths, or nights partying at the Hacienda. At best, listeners may have caught Sit Down or Born of Frustration on the right stations. Meanwhile, James were becoming massive over in the UK, having paid their dues in the 80s, building up a devoted following on the back of peerless live performances. They finally broke through during Manchester when the industry was busy turning over every stone in search of the next Manchester band to feast on. The re-release of Sit Down, once mishandled by Rough Trade, hit number 2, and with their fourth album, 7, they were playing Glastonbury's main stage and headlining their own gig at Alton Towers, a UK amusement park. Despite the disastrous weather, their drummer Dave Bayton-Power recalls 30,000 people, and we sold 20,000 t-shirts that day. After something the size of Alton Towers, there was a feeling of, what now? Reviewing the gig, the UK press said the following: James are still thriving, but need to maintain the maverick intimacy and exquisite yearning which have always been their motor. Bombast beckons temptingly, and James may be flirting, but they've yet to be seduced. Commenting on recent reviews, singer Tim Booth said the following: 7 was just one of those records the press turn on. Regardless of how good it is, it gets slagged. So, we felt, let's not play in Britain for a bit. We looked to acoustic music and we looked to the US because that was like starting afresh. James may not have known their destination, but they were about to find 2 seasoned guides ready to lead them down new paths. While on holiday, guitarist Saul Davies rang the band's office and learned 2 pieces of exciting news. The first was that an American musician wanted James to tour with him, Neil Young. Though just 12 dates, the shows were planned for initially outdoor venues with impressive natural settings and would be acoustic, reflecting the mood of Young's latest album, Harvest Moon. Young's manager had enjoyed 7 and been impressed with the band's impromptu acoustic sessions during the US radio promo. As bassist Jim Glennie recalls, "We always like to give a little acoustic performance, so the offer was, if you want to do the tour, this is how it'll have to be." Some members had misgivings, but adjusted their kit accordingly. And after a week of rehearsal, the tour began on the 15th of September, 1992 at the iconic Red Rocks Amphitheater, just outside Denver, Colorado. Tim was terrified. That first gig was nerve-wracking. I'd written this special song called Going Down on America, basically about giving America a blowjob, and we realized some of them might not like it. Jim would add that walking out to no speaker cabinets made them realize how protective all the equipment was. Here we are playing at a quarter the volume, making this sparse sound in front of 20,000 checker-shirted truck drivers. The band had heard that Young's crowd could be hard on support acts. However, Dave recalls, we went out there and gave it our best shot, and they loved us. We got a standing ovation from these 20,000 truckers. America. From the tour, this is the Greenpeace Palace concert, recorded on the 23rd of November, 1992 at the Hollywood Palace with Solar Energy. First LP. Second LP. Eventually the tour moved indoors and James continued to captivate American audiences and Neil Young with their improv-heavy sets. After a few weeks opening for the Soup Dragons and a week in Japan, they returned to the UK. That second piece of news Saul received? The ambient mastermind and most important man in pop, Brian Eno, wanted to produce the new James album. According to James, Brian Eno had always been the top of their wish list for producers. Quote, "If you look back at the people you love, Eno invariably produces their best album. And that's what we wanted to happen with us. But it was a bit like wanting a pony for Christmas. You'd assume nothing would ever come of it." So, how did this all come about? James had been recording rough demos at the Winding studio in Wrexham, including early versions of Say Something and Sometimes, and Tim mailed a tape to the producer along with a personal note. Eno apparently took the tape on holiday and gave it a listen. Then one morning, Tim's phone rang. It was Eno. They talked for an hour, and by the end, Eno was eager to produce the next record. Coming in the same week as Neil Young inviting them on tour, this was a huge boost for James. Being recognized and respected by their peers, they sent me a tape, and the first song was Sometimes, which I immediately thought was one of the great pop songs of all time. Guitarist Larry Gott recalled on Eno's first visit to Manchester, the band ran through some of their new songs. Then, James began to jam. Eno's response was, "I like that. What's that one called?" To which the band replied, "Well, we don't know. It's just a jam. We just made it up right then." Right there, they could see his eyes light up. This set Eno's mind working, giving him some rather ambitious ideas for the project. Recording for what would become Laid kicked off in February 1993 at the Winding studio, before moving to Peter Gabriel's Real World Studios in Bath. But before they even started, Brian Eno dropped a surprise on the band. They already knew his schedule was tight, just 6 weeks total, working only 4 days a week. Still, this proposal caught them off guard. "Let's make 2 albums. Making one would be a bit cowardly. Let's put our balls on the line and make 2. Eno explained that aiming for just 1 album felt risky. If they fell short, they'd have nothing to show for it. But if they set their sights on 2, even a failure would leave them with at least 1 solid record, maybe more. In his view, raising the stakes gave the band a better chance of walking away with something worthwhile. And, as it turned out, he was right. They set up 2 studios going simultaneously, one in the main room where the band, along with engineer Ben Fenner and Eno, would flesh out the more structured songs. In an adjoining studio, Eno's assistant Marcus Draves would work on the looser, more experimental side of James. In making a record, there's always a temptation to put every idea you've ever had into every song. Bad cooks do the same thing, use every spice in the kitchen. Now, because we had 2 records going on, the second could absorb a lot of this kind of edgy experimentation, which left the main album to be very simple and clear. Eno believed that cramming so much into 6 weeks would force a rare focus, more like a non-stop performance than a typical studio slog. And for the most part, that's exactly what happened. The pace was fast, intense, but fun. As they worked together, the band's interplay, their almost telepathic understanding, came to the fore. Eno loved the jamming, marveling at how it would spontaneously happen, reveling in the mystery of it. As the sessions progressed, the band's confidence and the spirit of experimentation grew. Quote, He'd go through these badly recorded rehearsal tapes containing hours of unlistenable noise, and he'd make notes. He'd listen to a 2-hour tape and somehow find a 10-second fragment and say, this would make a great song. To be honest, you'd think, what the fuck does he mean? But hey, it's Brian Eno saying it, so we'd work on it and he'd always be right. Eno saw the power in James's jams and wanted to capture them raw alongside their polished songs, revealing two essential sides of the band. They set up giant reel-to-reels so that they could play for over an hour without needing to change reels, these looser sessions eventually forming the second album. Meanwhile, in the main room, a track called Out to Get You was being revitalized. Once a forgotten B-side, it had become an acoustic gem on James's tour with Neil Young. In the studio, endless overdubs nearly killed its charm, until the band realized the magic was in the first take and kept it. The shows that we'd done and that acoustic vibe heavily influences Laid. We were playing in that way for at least 15 gigs, so it felt perfectly natural. A lot of Laid isn't acoustic, but there's a sense of it always being under the surface. Eno used his problem-solving skills to shape songs like Dream Thrum and Say Something, drawing on his oblique strategies cards, a deck of cryptic prompts such as honor thy error as hidden intention or work at a different speed. The goal was to jolt the musicians out of routine thinking and push them towards unexpected creative choices, helping the songs reach new heights. But there was one song that the band hadn't even considered recording. Laid's title track is the best example of how Eno overcame the cost of approach and procedures that the band had developed over the years. James had always had this hard work ethic in the studio, grinding away at tracks tirelessly. This had culminated on their previous album, 7, where they would tweak performances, adding layer upon layer. For this new record, that instinct was regularly being challenged, most effectively with this scratchy little demo called Raid. Originally viewed by the band as a throwaway song or, at best, a possible B-side, Brian Eno soon convinced them of the potential of this track. Quote, "We thought it was throwaway and lightweight. We thought it was just a little bit silly. And Brian had this bee in his bonnet. No, no, no. You've got to pursue this. We went into the big studio at Real World to completely nail it and get it perfect." After working away for some time on this revision, Eno said, "You're losing something here. There's something about this first take. Leave it at this." All this effort and focus to improve what they had only made it worse, not better. Speaking on the original recording from the Winding studio in Wales, Jim said the following: "We had just come back from the pub and we were just kind of bashing through. There's a scruffy rawness to it that just fits the song, just makes the song work." Left to their own devices, the band would have relied on endless takes and layers of effects. But coming from, of all people, Brian Eno, this approach transformed their perspective, and it prompted their label, Phonogram, to exclaim, "Wow, listen how raw and natural it sounds. He's a genius." Quote, "It's 2 minutes 50 and by far our most successful song ever. When you overthink things, sometimes you miss these things that are very simple and very direct." As the sessions drew to a close, James had roughly 50 songs completed. In the amount of time that the James of 7 would have spent getting a decent snare sound, this new James had not one, but 2 new albums. Now it was time to share the fruits of their efforts with the world. On the 27th of September, 1993, James released their 5th studio album, Laid, through Fontana Records. The album's cover featured the band in drag outside Marseille Cathedral, floral skirts, black minis, and bananas in hand, looking cheerfully ridiculous. Though now iconic, the image wasn't staged. The band saw it as a visual echo of their studio spirit, breaking out of the mundane and injecting fun into a dull shoot. Each member arrived with their partner's clothes, ready to swap when the moment came. Saul remembers, the gendarmes were standing around watching us, wondering whether they should arrest us. The bananas came in because it was an attempt to stop us from laughing and give us something to do with our mouths. I think we've appeared too po-faced for too many years, too serious. I think that shot shows a different side to us. Dave remembers the addition of the bananas being even more practical. We hate photo sessions. We're always moaning, I want to go home, I want a beer. This time it was, I'm hungry. So Martine popped across the road and came back with a load of bananas. When the band saw the photos, they quickly ditched their placeholder cover. Amused by the playful image, they named the album Laid, the new name for that quirky little track they'd once considered a throwaway. The album unfolds in a series of understated, leisurely songs lit up by Larry's bluesy slide work on a custom resonator guitar that mimicked a dobro's tone. Around it, ambient keyboards, melodica, marimba, and some of Saul's finest violin playing add texture, blending bluesy riffs with pastoral Americana and shimmering atmospheres. The new mood is made beautifully evident as soon as the opening bars of Out to Get You drift in. There's not a whisper of percussion until 2:26, and then just a whisper played on brushes. The mood is both desolate and serene, with Tim's mantra of "Here they come again, here they come again," borrowed from Seven's track Protect Me.
Here they come, here they come, here they come.
Released as the album's first single in late August, Sometimes was the tune that won over Brian Eno. Driven by a single strummed G chord, with the bass hinting at a plaintive progression, the song gallops forward, true to its original racehorse-inspired name of Lester Piggott. Sometimes was promoted with a Tim Pope video that took its watery theme literally, dunking the band in a giant tank on the James Bond stage at Pinewood Studios amid a man-made typhoon. Dream Thrum drifts with a hushed lullaby-like quality present across most of Laid. The band weren't convinced by early versions, but Eno pushed them to see it through. Tim in particular struggled to find a lyric that was right until locking this into place. We leave a trail that's always changed to keep your hopes alive. This surface may seem calm enough, but underneath. The result feels intimate yet elusive, like overhearing a private confession set in a dreamlike sway. Conversely, Eno couldn't get his head around one of the three. This led to the band working through early versions and refining it on Eno's day off. Quote, "One of the three to me captures the overall mood of that record, which is kind of thoughtful and trembles along while not really doing anything, but somehow pulls you in and is gorgeous." Originally appearing under the working title Carousel, Say Something carries a raw, pleading energy. A perfect example of the new James ethos at work, this anthem written during the Seven era is deliberately underplayed. Imagine a U2 Joshua Tree anthem dressed in ambient and post-punk production. The interplay of Jim's bass and Dave's iconic mechanical beat drive Tim's message along. Released as Laid's third single, it's one of the album's most direct emotional punches, aching with vulnerability but soaring at the same time.
Have you swallowed everything? Hit me in mind.
5-0 apparently has nothing to do with Jack Lord or the Hawaiian police force. Eno stumbled across this 20-second fragment the band had recorded, and from that spark, they improvised the song into being. This is yet another track that's emblematic of Laid's atmosphere. Violin and slide guitar weaving over spacey organs and this iconic drum hook, meshing to form something both pleading and tranquil. PS is kind of like the come down from the previous song, and a tour de force for Larry Gott's slide guitar, meshing again with Mark's ambient textures and Saul's melancholic violin serenade. Featuring some of my favorite lyrics off of Laid, Tim has said he wrote this one about Patti Smith, but I've never been able to find the connection. You're falling falling from your godlike distance. Your fashion, just fashion. Fashion doesn't keep. You're sour, so sour. All is hope and trust is misplaced. You're sour, now you are alone. The song's outro string swell is the album's most heart-wrenching moment yet.
Walking on fire, you rather than me.
Everybody Knows is simply unreservedly romantic, written about having someone lift you out of a depression and out of yourself. While musically undercooked compared to what's come before it, the atmosphere the band creates is stunningly gorgeous and textbook Eno. A perfect example of the gardening, not architecture, oblique strategies card.
Everybody knows your fate, honey. Everybody.
The album sinks to its lowest and softest on Knuckle Too Far, its minimalist composition rustling in with this fabulous, slightly discordant twang echo. This is a road song reportedly about the doldrums of touring, endless airports, hotels, and towns all blurring together.
So long.
Low, Low, Low bursts in like a rowdy pub chant, complete with Real World's kitchen staff on backing vocals. Lighthearted and boisterous, the band even reworked a second lyric version as Goal, Goal, Goal for England's 1994 World Cup campaign. But, of course, England never made it that far. And now we come to the title track, Laid, warts and all. Sloppy timing, badly recorded, but perfectly conveying that combustive, seat-of-their-pants James energy. James's performances at their best always felt like a high-wire act, like something could collapse at any moment. With Laid, they translated that energy into a recording, a first take for the ages. Featuring some of Tim's famous James yodeling, this song fulfills on the promise of what Low, Low, Low was trying for. It's iconic and timeless, a party anthem that's all about communal release.
Blind my eyes and call me pretty.
Lullaby returns to the somber with its plaintive waltz led by Jim's bass melody. Originally called Just Human, this one deals delicately and tenderly with the issue of child abuse. Every view they hold on you's a piano out of tune. You're an angel, you're a demon, you're just human. It's probably my favorite moment on the album, particularly when the piano melody enters followed by this spidery keyboard line performed by Mark to usher in the final chorus.
In this gloomy, haunted place.
Skin Diving ends the album with an experimental feel. The song's underpinned by this Manchester baggy drum machine rhythm over which the band and Eno conjure up this uneasy calm, equal parts scary but peaceful. Tim spends the whole song in a vulnerable falsetto, at the end assuring, "The surface is calm, the water is clear, the water's clear." To which these culminating layers of distorted dread and otherworldly twinkle swirl about over this faint whistling. Skin Diving delivers on the art rock promise of Eno's best work and is, for me, this record's most underrated moment. This is my original Sometimes CD single, backed with the B-sides America, aka Going Down on America, and Building a Charge. And this is my Sometimes 12-inch single. Was super happy to find this at Haggle Vinyl some 15 years ago in Islington, London. Got this lyric insert, simply vinyl reissue of Laid. Insert, first LP, nice and heavy. Second LP. And this is a 2023 reissue of Laid. This one's got inner sleeves and is red. Second inner sleeve, beautiful 12-inch photo of the band. This is my original Laid CD, initially signed by Saul and Cute Legs Jimmy in 1997 while promoting the Whiplash album, and then eventually signed by the remaining 4 members in 2008 while on tour in Canada. Reception to the new sound of Laid was lukewarm at first, but its profile grew throughout late '93 as James toured Europe and the UK, demonstrating the power of reinvention to their opening act, a young band called Radiohead. James's rising profile in the US coincided with the managerial shakeup. Since '92, they'd been managed by Martine McDonough in the UK and the legendary Peter Rudge in the States. But shortly after Laid's release, Martine stepped aside, leaving Rudge as sole manager. Rudge had a remarkable resume, having worked with The Stones, The Who, Leonard Skinner, and Duran Duran. Naturally, with that track record, one of his first moves was to concentrate the band's energies on America. Quote, "To me, they'd got England, but if they want to break America, you have to travel." And it worked. What would follow was an exhaustive doubling down on the expansive US. James supported the release of Laid with their participation on the WOMAD tour of the US in the late summer and appearances on all the major American talk shows in late '93. Letterman, Leno, O'Brien, Arsenio Hall. In early '94, they returned for the first of 3 tours in that year. Driven largely by this relentlessness, Laid went gold in the US, selling 600,000 copies at a time when British bands were struggling to break through the grunge-dominated market. What also helped was that after some reluctance, the band agreed to release Laid as the album's second single. It took some time to gain momentum, but much to the band's amusement, by mid-94, Laid became a staple on college and alternative radio. In retrospect, Tim would say the following: "It's a very amateur piece of work, so the idea that it should be a big American hit is bizarre, but it was the most played record on college radio that year." The irony wasn't lost on Larry. Born of Frustration didn't do it for us, but Daft Little Laid did. The entire band felt that the song's most risque line, "She only comes when she's on top," appealed to the frat boy sense of humor, but Dave thinks there's more to it than that. Eno kept saying this is a great little song. Everyone had their ideas what should be singles, but one guy at the record company out there said, "Give me this and I'll sort it out." I think the album did well because of all our albums. It's the most like a band playing in a room, and Americans like that. Look at the bands and records they like. There's no fancy overdubs or swaths of stuff. They like things raw, basic, and to the point. The accompanying music video for Laid was directed by London-based director Zana, known for primarily working with Simply Red and Crowded House. Released on the 1st of November '93, it featured the band returning to the cross-dressing motif, an image that became inseparable from the song's cheeky, irreverent lyrics. This is my Laid CD single, backed with Wah Wah Kits, The Lake, If You Know, You Know, and Seconds Away. There is also a CD2 with live cuts and a 7-inch, which maybe I'll find one day in my travels. As Laid started really taking off in the US, audiences would erupt when it came on. This led to the band sometimes playing Laid twice, once straight up and another rendition that was slowed down dubbed Get Laid Slowly, And at some of these performances, Tim would wear a dress, subverting gender norms while upping the theatricality. With each successive go-round of the States, James would see their fortunes improve. They'd get more days off, and then they didn't have to share a bus with the crew. Then it was a bigger bus. The hotels got fancier, venues bigger. Some cities were like second homes: Chicago, Toronto, San Francisco. By the end, they were selling out 5,000-seat venues in half an hour. It was like this big holiday, and they very much jumped in with both feet. As Dave saw it, America was the spiritual home of rock and roll behavior, and conceded the band did go a bit over the top, contributing to Larry, their longtime guitarist, deciding to eventually leave. Among other things, the band had discovered several recreational aids, including whippets, small canisters filled with enough nitrous oxide to produce a strong high. The band also developed a taste for ambient porn, adult videotapes played with the color and contrast cranked so high they looked like lava lamp blobs. On a Mexico trip, Dave bought some fireworks, and then back in LA, the band launched one from their hotel car park, and it flew all the way toward Beverly Hills, possibly setting a house on fire. Once the siren started, they promptly dismantled the other rocket and stuffed it in an air vent. And Tim, being less enamored with the rock and roll lifestyle, chose not to partake, but happily lived vicariously through the others. My belief is that some of our songs have acted as self-fulfilling prophecies, charms, and spells. We made a record called Laid, and our sex lives went through the roof. The next record we called Whiplash. I broke my neck. In the middle of all this craziness, and as the relentless North American schedule continued through September, the alternative album from the Laid sessions finally emerged. Originally called Frequency Dip by Eno, it was renamed, less pretentiously, to Wah Wah, released on the 29th of August, 1994. The band were pleased that their beloved music was public, but the delayed release frustrated them. For some, Wah Wah had always been a companion to Laid, which was now a year old. Eno suggested Wah Wah in order to take pressure off Laid. We wanted to get it out quickly. I think the experience of Laid influenced Eno's work on U2's Europa, but they got theirs out before we did. It was ahead of its time, but then no one knew what to do with it. It should have come out with Laid, maybe even free with Laid. James were stuck in a sort of catch-22 with Wah Wah. If they promoted it, people would think it was the new James record, but if they let it go unnoticed, their hard work on this companion album would not receive its dues. The moment might have passed from a marketing point of view, but Wah Wah is one of James's most enduringly interesting and creative works. Eno's signature is all over it, even more so than Laid. The mood is improvisatory, fluid, abstract, arising from the unique nature of the James rehearsals. On the 12th to 14th of August in Saugerties, New York, the Woodstock 2 festival took place. Unlike the free, innocent 1969 original, this one cost $135 a ticket and was brought to you by Pepsi and Häagen-Dazs and aired to millions via pay-per-view. Held in a muddy quagmire with no beer or drugs, dubbed Woodstock by Jim Glennie, it mostly showcased mid-90s US alternative rock from Nine Inch Nails to Porno for Pyros to Green Day, with token veterans Bob Dylan and Crosby, Stills and Nash. At this point, the band was exhausted. Their guitarist was contemplating leaving, yet they were extended this olive branch, a chance to truly blow away the American audience. James played Friday night and, in true James fashion, delivered a daring set of primarily new material from Laid and the even more challenging Wah Wah that hadn't even been released yet. I always feel that if we had gone that extra inch at that gig, we'd have really broken through in the States. I so nearly went into the mud, and I should have fucking done it, because when Trent Reznor did it the next day, it became the defining image of the festival. Him dancing caked in mud with all the mud people. At those moments, you can go through another door. This is Wawa. Piece of tape. First LP. Second LP. Another reissue of Wawa. This one's clear. Say Something / Jam J CD single. Jam J remix 12-inch. James versus the Sabres of Paradise, aka Andrew Weatherall. Rest in peace. Comes with a little card to get priority information on James from a P.O. box in London, which I'm sure is no longer active. And this is the Laid Wawa Deluxe 4-CD box set. Came out, I think, in 2015. Big and chunky. Tons of photos. Hopefully I'll get around to scanning some of these in for the video. A lot of work went into compiling this, clearly. So much good stuff. 4 CDs. And this, some buttons, alternate image of the cover, glossy of the band, and the band going down on America. Critical reception upon release for Laid was mixed to positive, but 30+ years on, it's become a fan favorite. The record's being included on numerous best of lists and is frequently lauded as a creative benchmark for the group, arguably their artistic peak. Examining the songs, there's this organic quality with nature, and in particular water as a metaphor appearing frequently. I've always felt that Laid is the perfect rainy day album. Besides the literal mentions of Sometimes, Skin Diving, and Lullaby, the way that the reverbs and ambient washes and those plucky keyboard bells and marimbas coalesce just perfectly convey raindrops. The music drifts between tender, emotionally resonant acoustic ballads and twitchier, more urgent grooves, with Eno encouraging the band to leave space and let accidents shape the songs. The bigger tunes are driven by repeating patterns and these hypnotic vocal mantras, yet end up being anthemic without the bombast. Forget the 3 chords of punk. Sometimes is literally just a G chord jangling into infinity. In the late 90s and early 2000s, the song Laid got a second life, gaining additional exposure and popularity when it was used as a theme song in the trailers for the American Pie films. Recently, the song was also used during a party scene in the TV series The Bear. So, if this album is so cherished and critically acclaimed, why didn't James reach even greater heights after Laid? Explaining that would take an entire video, but in short, James have always gone left when others went right, dressing like hippies when everyone else wore eyeliner, or wearing eyeliner when it was cool to grow beards and look disheveled. Musically, they've fallen in and out of fashion more times than the long list of opening acts they toured with who eventually became superstars. Yet, through it all, they've remained hungry, releasing a hugely compelling body of work across 4.5 decades. Today, the band are still together, stronger than ever, and released a critically acclaimed #1 album last year. And this fall, they are returning to America on their first headline tour in over a decade, performing Laid in its entirety along with other tracks. In fact, as I'm recording this, tonight is opening night. James have always followed their own path, guided by instinct and trusted collaborators. The band that once dismissed an Anthem as a throwaway, only to see it become their biggest song, have continued to evolve, subvert expectations, and do it all in that unmistakably James way. So, that's gonna do it for today. I'm gonna link below all the footage I can find of James performing in '93 and '94, along with some other goodies. There used to be these amazing full shows from '94 on YouTube, but it seems that channel's being taken down. If you've got a copy, get in touch. For further reading on this era, there's Folklore, The Official History by Stuart Maconie, if you can find a copy. The band's YouTube has these fun clips with Jim and Saul reminiscing on Late, and if you want to spend hours going down the James rabbit hole, oneofthe3.com is the quintessential James archive for photos, set lists, articles, rare clips, and more. If you enjoyed this video, kindly give it a thumbs up. And oh, there's this new hype feature. If you're seeing this in the first 7 days and want to get James going viral, on mobile you sort of swipe on the comments and then hit hype. Try it out, let's see what we can accomplish. Also, consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my post-punk and new wave videos, where I'll be diving into many great Manchester bands. What do you think of Late, and where would you rank it in James's discography? Let me know below if I got any facts wrong. I know there's many diehards out there, as well as if you've got an idea for another episode on James. Thanks for watching. You can see more of my videos right here. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you guys in the next one.